My marriage was like a luxury car with engine trouble. Looked good until you tried to drive it. The metaphor came to me as I sat in Romano's Café, watching my wife Miranda through the window across the street. She was supposed to be in a board meeting. Instead, she was laughing with some guy I'd never seen before, touching his arm like she owned it. I'm Owen Carver, 41 years old, and I fix computers for a living. Not glamorous, but it pays well enough to keep Miranda in her designer handbags and our kids in private school. Used to be the chess champion at Lincoln High, back when winning meant something. These days, I felt more like a pawn in someone else's game. The coffee in my cup had gone cold while I watched my wife flirt with a stranger. The guy was younger than me, maybe 35, with the kind of gym-built shoulders that screamed overcompensation. His hair was perfectly styled, and he wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up to find a woman standing beside my table. Stunning didn't begin to cover it. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, green eyes that seemed to see everything, and the kind of natural beauty that didn't need makeup to make an impression. "All yours," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. She sat down gracefully, placing her own coffee cup on the table. Her eyes followed my gaze to the window, where Miranda was now leaning closer to her companion, their conversation apparently getting more intimate. "Interesting view," the woman said quietly. "My wife seems to think so." She turned to look at me directly, and I felt like she was measuring something. "Your wife is dating my husband." The words hit me like a slap. I set my coffee cup down carefully, buying myself a moment to process what she'd just said. "Well, that's a plot twist," I managed. She smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I'm Julia Vaughn. The man with your wife is Nathan Barlow. They've been meeting here every Tuesday for the past month." I studied her face, looking for signs of the same devastation I felt churning in my gut. Instead, I found something else entirely. A cold, calculating intelligence that reminded me of myself when I was debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code. "How long have you known?" I asked. 3 weeks. I hired a private investigator after I found some suspicious charges on our credit card. Spa weekends, expensive dinners, hotel rooms. She paused, taking a sip of her coffee. "Your wife has expensive tastes." Through the window, Miranda threw back her head and laughed at something Nathan said. Her hand was still on his arm, and now his was covering hers. The intimacy of the gesture made my stomach turn. "What do you want from me?" I asked Julia. "Nothing yet, but I thought you should know what you're dealing with. This isn't just an affair, Owen. May I call you Owen?" When I nodded, she continued. "They're planning something bigger. My husband has been asking questions about our finances, our assets. He's been particularly interested in our joint accounts." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Miranda had been asking similar questions lately, casual inquiries about our retirement funds, our savings, the equity in our house. I'd assumed she was just being responsible, planning for our future. "They're going to run," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "That would be my guess. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" I looked at Julia again, really looked at her. There was something predatory in her stillness, like a cat watching a mouse. She wasn't just another victim. She was a player, and she was recruiting me for her team. "What did you have in mind?" "Nothing illegal, nothing violent. But I believe in consequences, don't you? Actions should have results. People who betray trust should face the music." Across the street, Miranda and Nathan were standing up, preparing to leave. She kissed him goodbye, right there on the sidewalk where anyone could see. The audacity of it took my breath away. "How long have you been married?" Julia asked. 18 years. We have 2 kids, Sophie and Max, 17 and 14. The words felt strange in my mouth, like I was describing someone else's life. "I've been married to Nathan for 8 years. No children, thankfully. It'll make things cleaner." Cleaner. The word choice was interesting, clinical, like she was already planning surgery. "What's your profession, Julia?" "Corporate law. Mergers and acquisitions, mostly. I'm very good at finding hidden assets and protecting my clients' interests." She smiled, and this time there was definitely humor in it, but not the kind that made you want to laugh. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Miranda had disappeared from view, probably heading back to her office at Prestige Realty, where she worked as a senior executive. She'd tell me tonight that the board meeting ran long, that they'd ordered in Chinese food, that she was exhausted from all the strategic planning. The lies would flow as smoothly as wine. "I need to think about this," I said. Julia reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. My number's on there. When you're ready to stop being a victim and start being a player, call me. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. Oh, and Owen, don't confront them yet. Trust me on this. The element of surprise is the only advantage we have right now. I watched her walk away, noting the confident set of her shoulders, the purposeful stride. She moved like someone who was used to getting what she wanted. My phone buzzed with a text message. Miranda, of course. Board meeting running late. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the screen, at those 3 little words that now felt like another lie. How many times had she texted me those same words while she was with Nathan? How many times had she come home and kissed me with lips that had been on another man? The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm. I needed air, space to think. I walked outside and started toward my car, Julia's business card still clutched in my hand. As I drove home, I thought about chess. In chess, the key to winning wasn't just protecting your own pieces. It was understanding your opponent's strategy, anticipating their moves, and setting traps they wouldn't see until it was too late. I'd been playing defense for 18 years, trying to be the good husband, the provider, the man Miranda could depend on. But defense doesn't win games. It just delays the inevitable loss. Maybe it was time to learn how to play offense. Julia's Café suggestion to meet again came 2 days later. I'd spent those 48 hours in a strange state of hyper-awareness, watching Miranda's every move, cataloging her lies, building a mental inventory of her deceptions. She'd claimed to be working late Wednesday night. I drove by her office, parking lot empty, building dark. She came home at 11:30, claiming the client dinner had gone longer than expected. She smelled like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. Thursday morning, she was unusually affectionate, making my favorite breakfast, asking about my day, touching my shoulder as she passed. Guilt, I realized. She was trying to balance the scales with small kindnesses. You seem distracted lately, she said, refilling my coffee cup. Everything okay at work? Just a challenging project, I lied smoothly. Network security upgrade for a law firm. Very complicated. She nodded sympathetically, but I caught her checking her phone while she thought I wasn't looking. The screen lit up with a message preview. Can't wait to see you again. I met Julia at a different cafe this time, one across town where we were less likely to be spotted by anyone we knew. She was already waiting when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall. Smart positioning, she could see everyone coming and going. You look terrible, she said as I sat down. Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel special. I'm not here to make you feel special, Owen. I'm here to help you get your life back. She slid a manila folder across the table. Take a look. Inside were photographs, printed emails, bank statements, and what looked like a timeline written in Julia's precise handwriting. The evidence was overwhelming and methodically organized. Nathan's been planning this for months, she said quietly. The affair with Miranda is just part of it. He's been researching divorce law, asset protection, offshore accounts. He even consulted with a private investigator about surveillance techniques. I flipped through the papers, my anger building with each page. There were screenshots of text messages between Nathan and Miranda, discussing me like I was an obstacle to be managed rather than a person with feelings. Look at page 4, Julia said. It was a printed email from Nathan to someone named Rick, apparently a financial advisor. The subject line read, Liquidation Strategy Discussion. The body of the email outlined a plan to gradually move assets out of joint accounts, convert them to untraceable forms, and establish new accounts in countries with strict banking privacy laws. They're not just having an affair, I said, the full scope of their betrayal becoming clear. They're planning to rob us blind and disappear. Now you're getting it. This isn't about romance, Owen. It's about money. Miranda makes good money at her real estate job, and Nathan knows I have family money. Together, we represent a significant financial opportunity for them. I thought about our joint savings account, the college funds I'd been contributing to for years, the retirement account I'd been building since my 20s. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd saved for our future, our children's future. They were planning to steal it all. What's their timeline? I asked. Based on the patterns I've identified, I'd guess they're planning to make their move within the next month. Nathan's been asking more aggressive questions about my accounts, and according to these messages, Miranda's been researching international travel requirements. She was right. Miranda had mentioned needing to renew her passport a few weeks ago, claiming it was for a potential business trip to Canada. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. So, what's our move? I asked. Julia leaned forward, her green eyes intense. We beat them at their own game, but we have to be smart about it. No emotional outbursts, no confrontations until we're ready. We gather evidence, protect our assets, and then we destroy them systematically. Destroy them how? Socially, professionally, financially. We make sure everyone knows what they are and what they've done. We make sure they lose everything they were trying to steal from us, plus everything they already had. The vindictiveness in her voice should have scared me. Instead, I found it oddly comforting. For the first time in days, I felt like I had an ally, someone who understood the depth of the betrayal and was willing to fight back. I'll need access to Miranda's devices, I said. Her phone, her laptop, her work computer if possible. Can you manage that without raising suspicion? I've been managing our home network for years. She thinks I'm just the IT guy who fixes things when they break. She has no idea what I'm actually capable of. Julia smiled approvingly. Good. I'll handle the financial investigation. I have resources Nathan doesn't know about, ways to track money movement that won't show up on regular banking alerts. We spent the next hour planning our reconnaissance strategy. Julia would continue monitoring Nathan's activities while I focused on gathering intelligence from Miranda's digital life. We agreed to meet again in a week to compare notes and plan our next phase. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Purpose. For too long, I'd been reactive, responding to Miranda's moods and demands, trying to keep peace in a marriage that was already over. Now I had a mission, a clear objective, and a partner who understood the stakes. Miranda was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing dinner with unusual enthusiasm. She was wearing the blue dress I'd always liked, the one that brought out her eyes, and she'd opened a bottle of wine. Perfect timing, she said, kissing my cheek. I made your favorite, chicken parmesan. What's the occasion? Can't a wife cook for her husband without having an ulterior motive? She asked playfully. But I knew better now. Every gesture of affection was calculated, designed to maintain the illusion while she planned my destruction. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold. How was your day? I asked, playing my part in our domestic theater. Busy. Lots of client meetings, paperwork, the usual chaos. But I have some exciting news. I might be getting promoted to regional manager. It would mean more travel, better commission structure, real career advancement. More travel. Of course. The perfect cover for her escape plan. That's wonderful, honey. You deserve it. She beamed at me, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. Young, ambitious, full of dreams about the life we'd build together. What had happened to that woman? When had she become someone who could smile at me while planning to rob me? After dinner, while Miranda was in the shower, I implemented the first phase of my intelligence gathering. Her laptop was in the home office, password protected but not encrypted. I'd set up the home network. I knew every device, every access point, every vulnerability. Within minutes, I had access to her email accounts, her cloud storage, her social media messages. What I found there made my stomach turn. Months of communication with Nathan, detailed discussions about their future together, casual mockery of my boring personality and limited ambitions. But the worst part was reading about their physical relationship, the intimate details she shared with her friends, the way she described me as adequate but uninspiring compared to Nathan's passion and energy. I copied everything to an encrypted drive, careful to cover my tracks. Miranda would never know I'd been there, but now I had ammunition. The question was how to use it most effectively. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. How did it go? I typed back. Better than expected. We need to meet sooner than planned. Tomorrow. As I heard Miranda turning off the shower, I quickly closed the laptop and returned it to its exact position. When she emerged from the bathroom in her silk robe, hair damp and smelling like expensive shampoo, I was sitting on the bed reading a technical manual. You work too hard, she said, settling beside me. Someone has to pay for all this luxury, I replied, gesturing around our well-appointed bedroom. She laughed, but I caught something in her expression, a flicker of contempt, quickly hidden. You're so practical, Owen. It's one of the things I love about you. Love. The word felt like poison in the air between us. I love you too, I said, and for the first time in our marriage, the words were a complete lie. But lying, I was discovering, came easier than I'd expected. Maybe I'd learned from the best. The opportunity came sooner than I'd anticipated. Miranda announced on Friday that she'd be attending a weekend conference in Chicago, leaving Saturday morning and returning late Sunday. A real estate industry summit, she explained, with workshops on market trends and networking opportunities. It's important for the promotion, she said, packing her weekend bag with unusual care. I need to make connections, show them I'm serious about advancing my career. I helped her pack, playing the supportive husband while mentally cataloging the expensive lingerie she was including. Interesting choices for a professional conference. I'll miss you, I said, kissing her goodbye. I'll miss you too. Take care of the kids, okay? Sophie has that drama club rehearsal, and Max needs help with his science project. After she left, I called Julia. She's gone for the weekend. If you want to search Nathan's place, now's the time. Actually, I have a better idea. Nathan thinks I'm visiting my sister in Portland. He's planning to spend the weekend at your house. My grip tightened on the phone. What? I've been monitoring his messages. He told Miranda the coast would be clear, that he could finally see where she lives, spend time in her real environment. They're planning a romantic weekend in your marital bed, Owen? The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. They weren't content with betraying me. They wanted to defile my home, my sanctuary, the place where my children lived. When? I managed to ask. Tonight. He's supposed to arrive after the kids are asleep. Miranda gave him the garage code. I closed my eyes, thinking fast. Sophie was at a sleepover with friends. Max was planning to spend the night at his friend Jake's house, playing video games and eating pizza. The house would be empty, except for me, and I was supposed to be at a work conference in Seattle. Julia, how do you feel about a little breaking and entering? Technically, it's not breaking and entering if you live there. Good point. Are you free tonight? I wouldn't miss it for the world. We met at a diner across town to finalize our plan. Julia had brought equipment, small cameras, audio recording devices, even what looked like professional surveillance gear. Where did you get all this? I asked. Corporate espionage is more common than people think. Sometimes you need to know what the competition is really planning. She smiled grimly. I've used these tools before, just never for personal reasons. Our strategy was simple but effective. I would hide in the house, recording everything with multiple cameras while Julia monitored from outside, ready to call for backup if things went wrong. We weren't planning to confront them directly. We wanted evidence, ammunition for the larger war we were planning. Remember, Julia said as we reviewed the plan, we need them to incriminate themselves. Let them talk, let them plan, let them reveal the full scope of what they're doing. The more rope we give them, the better they'll hang themselves. I got home around 8, sent the kids to their respective sleepovers, and began setting up the surveillance equipment. Cameras in the living room, bedroom, and kitchen, audio devices in strategic locations. Everything connected to a central recording system that would capture multiple angles and crystal clear sound. By 10 o'clock, I was hidden in the basement, watching the feeds on my laptop and waiting for the show to begin. Nathan arrived at 10:30, using the garage code Miranda had given him. Watching him enter my house, move through my kitchen, help himself to a drink from my liquor cabinet, it took every ounce of self-control I had not to march upstairs and throw him out. But Julia was right. We needed evidence. He made himself comfortable, clearly familiar with the layout. This wasn't his first time in my house, I realized. The casual way he navigated to the living room, knew where to find the good whiskey, even adjusted the thermostat. He'd been here before, probably multiple times. Miranda arrived an hour later, letting herself in through the front door like she was coming home from a normal evening out. Honey, I'm home, she called playfully, and Nathan laughed. They embraced in my foyer, kissing with an intensity that made my chest tight. But I forced myself to keep watching, to keep recording. This was evidence. This was ammunition. I can't believe we're finally doing this, Miranda said, leading him toward the stairs. Being here together, in our space. Our space. She was already thinking of my house as theirs. It feels right, Nathan replied. Like this is how it should be. They went upstairs, and I switched to the bedroom camera. What followed was intimate and painful to watch, but I forced myself to observe, to record, to gather the evidence that would destroy them both. But the real revelation came afterward, as they lay in my bed, talking about their future. The accounts are almost ready, Nathan said, stroking Miranda's hair. Another 2 weeks, and we'll have everything transferred. What about Owen? He's not stupid, Nathan. He's going to notice when the money starts disappearing. By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone. Besides, what's he going to do? He's too passive, too comfortable. He'll lawyer up, file for divorce, and try to recover what he can through the courts. But by then, the money will be untouchable. And the kids? What about them? They're old enough to choose where they want to live. Sophie's almost 18 anyway, and Max worship you. They'll understand eventually. Miranda was quiet for a moment. I feel bad about Sophie and Max. They don't deserve this. They'll be fine. Kids are resilient. And honestly, Miranda, they'll be better off without Owen's influence. The man has no ambition, no vision. He's content to fix computers and live in suburban mediocrity forever. You're right. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who does this. You're not doing anything wrong. You're choosing happiness over obligation. You're refusing to settle for a life that doesn't fulfill you. That's not selfish. That's brave. The rationalization was masterful. Nathan was reframing theft and betrayal as acts of courage and self-actualization. And Miranda was buying every word. They talked for another hour, revealing details about offshore accounts, travel plans, even a house Nathan had been researching in Costa Rica. Everything was recorded, every incriminating word captured in high definition. Around 2 a.m, they finally fell asleep. I waited another hour to make sure, then crept upstairs with a can of industrial-strength pepper spray and my son's paintball gun. The pepper spray went into the air conditioning system, not enough to cause permanent harm, but enough to make the house extremely uncomfortable very quickly. The paintball gun was loaded with bright red paintballs that would stain everything they touched. Then I triggered the house alarm. The sound was deafening, a shrieking siren that sent Nathan bolting upright in bed. Miranda was right behind him, both of them naked and disoriented. The pepper spray was already taking effect. Their eyes were watering, and they were coughing. "What the hell?" Nathan started to say, but I cut him off. "Get out of my house." I was standing in the doorway, paintball gun raised, wearing a gas mask I'd borrowed from my emergency kit. They couldn't see my face clearly, but they could definitely see the weapon. "Owen?" Miranda's voice was small, frightened. "Get out, now." Nathan grabbed for his clothes, but I fired a paintball that splattered red paint across his chest and the white sheets. He yelped and stumbled backward. "Leave the clothes, leave everything, just get out." The alarm was still blaring, and I could see neighbors' lights coming on across the street. Perfect. I wanted witnesses. Nathan ran for the stairs, still naked, with Miranda close behind clutching a sheet around herself. I followed, firing paintballs at Nathan's retreating form, marking him like a target. "Owen, please, let me explain," Miranda started. "Explain what? How you gave my house key to your boyfriend? How you've been planning to rob me blind? How you've been screwing him in our bed while I was working to pay for your lifestyle?" She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, shock replacing fear on her face. "You know, I know everything, Miranda. Every lie, every stolen moment, every dollar you were planning to take. I know about Costa Rica, about the offshore accounts, about your touching belief that my children will be better off without their father." Nathan had made it to the front door and was fumbling with the locks, paint-stained and coughing. I fired one more paintball that caught him square in the back as he finally got the door open. "If I see you on my property again," I called after him, "I'll have you arrested for trespassing." He ran into the night, naked and humiliated, while neighbors gathered on their porches to watch the show. Miranda stood in my foyer, clutching her sheet, tears streaming down her face. "Owen, I can explain." "No need. I have hours of video footage of you explaining everything to Nathan. Very thorough explanations, actually, very detailed." Her face went white. "You recorded us?" "Every word, every moment, every betrayal." I smiled, and I could see my expression scared her. "Now get out. This is my house, too. Check the locks, Miranda. Check the bank accounts. Check your credit cards. You'll find that cheating wives who steal from their husbands don't get to keep living in luxury while they plan their escape." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "You can't do this. I have rights." "You had rights. You gave them up when you decided to rob me and abandon our children. Now you have consequences." The police arrived as she was trying to argue with me, summoned by the alarm system. I explained that I'd discovered intruders in my house, showed them the surveillance footage of Nathan using a key to enter without permission, and filed a formal trespassing complaint. Miranda tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that she lived here, but when the officers asked to see her identification, they found that her driver's license still listed our address while the house deed, which I'd had transferred to my name only the previous week, showed only me as the owner. "Ma'am, you'll need to leave the premises," the senior officer told her. "If you have belongings here, you can arrange to collect them through your attorney." As the police car drove away and the neighbors finally went back inside, I stood alone in my house for the first time in 18 years. The silence was profound, broken only by the gentle hum of the air conditioning system cycling fresh air through the rooms. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. "How did it go?" I typed back. "Phase 1 complete, ready for Phase 2. "Excellent. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start the real fun." I walked through my house, turning off lights, checking locks, surveying the damage. There were paint stains on the bedroom carpet and walls, but they would clean up. Everything else could be replaced, repaired, restored. Everything except my marriage. But that had been broken long before tonight. As I finally headed to bed, in the guest room, since I'd never sleep in that bed again, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: satisfaction. The game had finally begun, and I was no longer playing defense. The gossip network in our suburban neighborhood operated faster than the internet. By Sunday morning, everyone within a 5-block radius knew that Miranda Carver had been caught cheating and thrown out of her house by her husband. The details grew more dramatic with each retelling. By noon, some versions had me chasing Nathan down the street with a shotgun. I didn't correct the stories. Reputation was a weapon, and right now I needed all the weapons I could get. Miranda tried calling 17 times on Sunday. I let every call go to voicemail, then listened to her messages with detached curiosity. The progression was fascinating from a psychological standpoint. Anger, denial, bargaining, threats, and finally, desperate pleading. "Owen, this is ridiculous. We need to talk like adults. You can't just change the locks and steal my house. I'm calling my lawyer. Please, can we just sit down and work this out? I made a mistake, but we can fix this. I'll take you for everything you've got. You'll never see the kids again. Owen, please. I'm staying at a hotel. I don't have anywhere to go. Can we please just talk?" Julia arrived at my house Sunday evening with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. She looked pleased with herself, like a cat who'd caught a particularly satisfying mouse. "How was your weekend?" she asked innocently. "Educational. I learned that my wife is an even better actress than I thought, and that Nathan runs surprisingly fast for someone who spends so much time at the gym." She laughed, settling onto my couch like she belonged there. "I heard the neighborhood is buzzing with rumors. Small towns love a scandal. I'm just giving them what they want. Speaking of giving people what they want," she pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. Nathan's social media presence took quite a hit today. Someone had posted photos of Nathan running naked down my street, paint-stained and clearly panicked. His face was visible in several shots, and the images had been shared dozens of times across various platforms. The comments were brutal. "How did these get online so fast?" I asked. "Mrs. Henderson from across the street has a security camera with excellent night vision. She was very helpful when I explained that I was documenting evidence of a crime." I studied Julia's expression. "You orchestrated this?" "I may have suggested that concerned citizens should document criminal activity in their neighborhood. For safety purposes, of course." The sophistication of her approach impressed me. While I'd been focused on gathering evidence and protecting my assets, she'd been thinking about the broader campaign, the social and professional destruction that would make it impossible for Nathan and Miranda to simply disappear and start over somewhere else. "What's next?" I asked. "Tomorrow, Miranda's colleagues get to see some very interesting emails. Nathan's boss receives documentation of his fraudulent expense reports. I found evidence that he's been billing personal expenses to company accounts. And both of their families get a carefully curated selection of their correspondence." "Their families?" "Nathan's parents are very religious, very conservative. They're going to be fascinated by his plans to abandon his wife and steal money from his employer. Miranda's sister Jennifer has always been jealous of her success. She'll make sure everyone in their hometown knows exactly what kind of person Miranda really is." The thoroughness of Julia's intelligence gathering was remarkable. She'd mapped their entire social network, identified pressure points, and planned a coordinated assault on every relationship they valued. "You're scary," I told her. "I'm effective. There's a difference." My phone rang. Miranda again. This time I answered. "What do you want?" "Owen, thank God. We need to talk. This has gotten completely out of hand." "Has it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, everything is going exactly according to plan." "What plan?" "Owen, you're not thinking clearly. You're hurt and you're angry, and I understand that, but what? But I should just forgive you for planning to rob me and abandon our children? But I should pretend I didn't hear you and Nathan discussing how much better off everyone would be without me?" Silence on the other end of the line. "You recorded our private conversations?" "I recorded 2 criminals planning to commit fraud and theft. The fact that one of those criminals is my wife just makes it more personally satisfying." "Owen, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We have 18 years together, 2 children, a life. We had those things. You threw them away for a man who runs naked through suburban neighborhoods when he gets scared." Julia was watching me with approval, like a coach whose student was finally executing the plays correctly. "I want to see my children," Miranda said. "That can be arranged. Through your lawyer, with supervised visitation, after you explain to them why Mommy was planning to steal their college funds and move to Costa Rica." "I would never. I have recordings, Miranda, hours of them, including the part where you and Nathan discussed how the kids would be better off without my limited ambitions holding them back." Another long silence. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked. "Nothing. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point." I hung up and turned to Julia. "She's going to lawyer up." "Let her. I've already moved our assets to protected accounts. By the time her lawyer figures out what happened, there won't be anything left to fight over. Our assets? Julia smiled. Figure of speech. Your assets, of course, though I may have some suggestions about investment strategies that would be very difficult for divorce attorneys to trace. We spent the evening planning the next phase of our campaign. Julia had compiled dossiers on everyone in Miranda and Nathan's professional and social circles, identifying allies, enemies, and neutral parties who could be swayed with the right information. The key, she explained, is to make them pariahs, not just divorced, not just unemployed, but completely ostracized. When people think of Miranda Carver and Nathan Barlow, they should think of betrayal, theft, and moral bankruptcy. That seems harsh. They were planning to steal your life savings and abandon you with 2 children to raise alone. Harsh is exactly what they deserve. She was right, of course. Miranda and Nathan had shown no mercy in their planning, no consideration for the lives they would destroy. Why should I show them any consideration now? My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Dad, Mom called me crying. She says you kicked her out and won't let her come home. What's going on? I'd been dreading this conversation. Sophie was 17, old enough to understand adult complexities, but still young enough to believe that parents were supposed to stay together no matter what. I typed back, It's complicated, sweetheart. We'll talk when you get home tomorrow. Is it because of that guy she's been seeing? My heart stopped. What guy? The one from her work. I saw them together at the mall last month. She said he was just a colleague, but it didn't look like a work meeting. So Sophie already knew, at least partially. That would make the conversation easier, but also more painful. My daughter had been carrying this knowledge, probably wondering if she should tell me, struggling with the burden of her mother's secret. We'll talk tomorrow, I typed again. I love you. Love you too, Dad. Are you okay? I'm going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. Julia was reading over my shoulder. Smart girl. Too smart. She's been protecting me from the truth. Kids always know more than parents think they do. The question is whether you're going to lie to her to protect Miranda or tell her the truth to protect yourself. It wasn't really a question. Sophie deserved the truth, age-appropriate and carefully presented, but the truth nonetheless. She was almost an adult, and she had the right to make informed decisions about her relationships with both her parents. I'll tell her everything, I said. Both kids, they need to know who they're dealing with. Julia nodded approvingly. Good, because Miranda's going to try to turn them against you. She'll play the victim, claim you're being cruel and unreasonable. If they don't know the facts, they might believe her. As Julia prepared to leave, she handed me a thick envelope. What's this? Insurance policy. Copies of everything we've gathered, plus some additional research I did on Miranda's business practices. Did you know she's been skimming commission from her real estate deals? Small amounts, very cleverly hidden, but definitely illegal. I stared at the envelope. How did you find this? I'm very good at finding hidden assets, remember? It's what I do for a living. She paused at the door. Owen, are you sure you want to go this far? Once we release this information, there's no going back. Miranda won't just be divorced and unemployed. She'll be facing criminal charges. I thought about the recordings I'd made, about Miranda's casual dismissal of our children's needs, about Nathan's smug confidence that I was too weak to fight back. She made her choice, I said. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Julia smiled, and for the first time, it was warm and genuine. I knew you had it in you. After she left, I sat alone in my house, surrounded by the evidence of 18 years of marriage. Wedding photos on the mantel, family vacation pictures on the walls, children's artwork still hanging on the refrigerator. Tomorrow, I would have to explain to my children why their mother was gone, why their family was broken, why the woman they trusted had been planning to abandon them. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. The game was far from over, but I was finally learning how to win. The mediation meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. in the conference room of Healy & Associates, the law firm I'd retained to handle my divorce. Miranda arrived with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Wells, who specialized in high-asset divorce cases. She'd clearly been briefed to expect a standard case of marital dissolution, with the usual arguments about asset division and custody. What she wasn't expecting was Julia. Who is she? Patricia asked as Julia took a seat at the conference table. Mrs. Vaughn is here as my consultant. My attorney, Robert Healy, explained smoothly. She has expertise in financial asset recovery that's relevant to this case. Miranda looked nervous, glancing between Julia and me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Nathan wasn't there, his invitation had been separate, and he was scheduled to arrive at 2:30. I wanted Miranda to have time to get comfortable before the real show began. "Owen," Miranda said, her voice carefully modulated to sound reasonable and hurt, "I hope we can work this out amicably, for the children's sake." "Of course," I replied. "I want what's best for Sophie and Max, too." Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "We're prepared to offer a fair division of assets, 50-50 split of all marital property, joint custody of the children, and reasonable alimony arrangements." "That's very generous," Healy said dryly. "Unfortunately, there are some complications we need to discuss first." He activated the room's multimedia system, and the wall-mounted screen came to life. The first image was a bank statement showing the systematic withdrawal of funds from our joint savings account over the past 6 months. "Mrs. Carver," Healy continued, "can you explain these transactions?" Miranda's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "Those were legitimate expenses. Home improvements, children's activities, normal household costs." "Interesting." The screen changed to show a series of hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and travel expenses. "Because according to these receipts, the money was spent on romantic getaways with Nathan Barlow." Patricia leaned forward, studying the documents. "Where did you obtain these records?" "Legal discovery," Julia said calmly, "all obtained through proper channels with appropriate warrants." It wasn't entirely true. Julia's methods had been more creative than strictly legal, but Patricia didn't need to know that. The door opened and Nathan walked in, looking confident and slightly annoyed at being summoned to what he clearly thought was someone else's divorce proceeding. His expression changed when he saw Julia sitting at the table. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. "Sit down, Nathan," Julia said quietly. "We have a lot to discuss." The next hour was a masterclass in systematic destruction. Julia and Healy presented evidence like prosecutors building a case, financial records, email communications, surveillance photos, and finally selected audio recordings from my home surveillance system. Nathan's voice filled the conference room. "By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone. Besides, what's he going to do? He's too passive, too comfortable." Miranda's response followed. "And the kids? What about them? They're old enough to choose where they want to live. Sophie's almost 18 anyway, and Max worships you. They'll understand eventually." Patricia Wells looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Nathan was staring at the speaker with horror, realizing that his own words were being used to destroy him. "This is illegal surveillance," he protested. "You can't record people without their consent." "Actually," Healy said pleasantly, "in this state, homeowners have the right to record activity in their own homes, especially when investigating suspected criminal activity." "Criminal activity?" The screen changed again, showing bank routing numbers, offshore account information, and wire transfer records. Julia had been busy. "Conspiracy to commit fraud," she explained. "Theft of marital assets with intent to conceal. And in Nathan's case, embezzlement from his employer. Those expense account irregularities were very interesting to investigate." Nathan's face went from pale to green. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually, we can," Julia smiled. "I'm very good at following money trails. Your Costa Rica account was surprisingly easy to trace once I knew where to look." Miranda finally found her voice. "Owen, please. This doesn't have to be so vindictive. We can work something out privately." "Like you and Nathan worked things out privately? Like you planned to work out my financial ruin privately?" I leaned forward. "Miranda, you recorded yourself committing crimes. You documented your own conspiracy to defraud me and abandon our children. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" Patricia Wells cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should discuss a settlement that avoids criminal prosecution." "Oh, but that's not up to us anymore," Healy said. "You see, once we discovered the extent of the financial fraud, we were legally obligated to report it to the authorities. The district attorney's office is very interested in this case." It was a bluff. We hadn't contacted the DA yet. But Nathan didn't know that. He looked like he was about to be sick. "What do you want?" Miranda asked desperately. "Justice," I said simply. "I want you to face the consequences of your choices." Julia activated her laptop, and suddenly the conference room screen was showing a live stream. "I hope you don't mind, but I thought your friends and family might be interested in this conversation." The viewer count was climbing. 23 people, then 35, then 47. I could see names in the chat sidebar: Miranda's sister Jennifer, her colleagues from the real estate office, Nathan's parents, neighbors from our street. "Turn it off," Miranda shrieked. "I don't think so," Julia said calmly. "Transparency is important in legal proceedings. The public has a right to know when trusted community members are revealed to be thieves and adulterers. Nathan lunged for Julia's laptop, but I was faster. I caught his wrist and twisted, using leverage techniques I'd learned in a self-defense class years earlier. He yelped and stumbled backward. "Assault!" Patricia Wells protested. "Self-defense," Healy corrected. Mr. Barlow was attempting to destroy evidence and interfere with legal proceedings. The viewer count was over 100 now. The chat was exploding with comments, mostly expressions of shock and outrage. Miranda's carefully constructed social reputation was disintegrating in real time. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please turn it off." "Did you think about Sophie and Max when you were planning to steal their college funds?" I asked. "Did you consider their feelings when you were discussing how much better off they'd be without their father?" She couldn't answer. The recordings had captured her own words, her own callous dismissal of our children's needs. Nathan made another desperate play. "Julia, if you stop this now, I'll sign over everything. The house, the accounts, all of it." "You don't have anything left to sign over," she replied. "I've already recovered the stolen assets and secured them in protected trusts. Your Costa Rica account has been frozen by international banking authorities. Your employer has been notified of your embezzlement. Your parents now know exactly what kind of man they raised." The viewer count hit 200. I could see my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, in the chat, along with several of Miranda's colleagues and what looked like half our children's school's parent network. "This is enough," Patricia Wells said, standing up. "We're leaving." "Actually, you're not." Healy pressed a button on the conference table, and the door locks engaged with an audible click. "This is now an official deposition. Leaving would constitute obstruction of justice." It was another bluff. We couldn't actually lock them in, but the psychological effect was perfect. Nathan was hyperventilating, Miranda was sobbing, and Patricia Wells was frantically taking notes, probably calculating how to minimize her own professional liability. "Let me explain what's going to happen," I said, standing up and addressing both the room and the online audience. Miranda Carver and Nathan Barlow have spent months planning to steal money from their spouses and abandon their families. They've committed fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. They've betrayed every person who trusted them. The chat was going crazy. I could see Sophie's name in the viewer list. She was watching from her friend's house, seeing her mother's betrayal exposed for the world to witness. "But more than that," I continued, "they've shown complete contempt for the people who loved them. They've treated their families like obstacles to be overcome rather than human beings with feelings and rights." Miranda looked up at me through her tears. "Owen, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your plan failed. But you're not sorry for what you did, because if you were truly sorry, you never would have done it in the first place." The screen changed one final time, showing a legal document. "This is a restraining order," Healy announced. "Mrs. Carver and Mr. Barlow are prohibited from contacting the victims, accessing any disputed accounts, or leaving the state pending criminal investigation." "You can't do this," Nathan protested weakly. "Actually, we can," Julia said. "And we have. Your passport has been flagged, your accounts are frozen, and your employers have been notified. You're not going anywhere." The viewer count was over 300 now. Our story had gone viral in our small community, spreading through social media faster than we could track. Miranda and Nathan weren't just facing legal consequences, they were facing complete social annihilation. "The stream will remain active," Julia announced to the camera, "so the community can see how this situation resolves. Transparency is the best disinfectant for this kind of corruption." As the meeting finally ended and the locks disengaged, Miranda and Nathan fled the conference room like criminals escaping a courthouse. Patricia Wells followed, already on her phone, probably trying to withdraw from the case. Julia closed her laptop, ending the stream. "I think that went well." 300 viewers, I said, checking the final count. "That's probably half the town." "Good. By tomorrow, everyone will know exactly who they're dealing with." Healy was packing up his papers with obvious satisfaction. "I've been practicing law for 30 years, and I've never seen a more complete destruction of opposing parties. They'll be lucky to avoid prison time." As we left the law office, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. The trap had worked perfectly. Miranda and Nathan were ruined, their reputations destroyed, their plans shattered. But victory felt different than I'd expected. Colder, more final. "Any regrets?" Julia asked as we walked to our cars. I thought about it honestly. No. They made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. Good, because this isn't over yet. Tomorrow, we finish it. As I drove home, I wondered what my children would think of what they'd witnessed. Sophie had seen her mother exposed as a liar and a thief. Max would soon learn that the woman he'd trusted had been planning to abandon him, but they deserved the truth. They deserved to know who their parents really were, both the mother who had betrayed them and the father who had fought to protect them. The game was almost over. One more move, and checkmate would be complete. The rooftop party was Nathan's last desperate attempt to salvage his reputation. He'd rented the penthouse event space at the Meridian Tower, invited everyone he knew from work and his social circle, and was apparently planning to spin the entire scandal as a misunderstanding, a vindictive ex-wife's attempt to destroy an innocent man. Julia had intercepted the invitation through her network of contacts. Nathan's assistant, it turned out, was a friend of a friend who'd been following our live-streamed confrontation with great interest. "He's calling it a truth-telling party," Julia explained as we sat in my car in the parking garage beneath the tower. "He's planning to present his version of events, claim that you and I are the real villains, and try to rebuild his social network." "And Miranda?" "She'll be there. She's been staying at Nathan's apartment since the restraining order forced her out of the hotel. Apparently, they've decided that if they're going down, they'll go down together." The irony was perfect. They'd started this affair in secret, sneaking around, lying to everyone who trusted them. Now they were making their relationship public in a final, desperate gambit to control the narrative. "Are you ready for this?" Julia asked. I checked my phone. Sophie and Max were safely at their aunt's house. Miranda's sister, Jennifer, had surprisingly taken my side once she learned the full scope of Miranda's betrayal. The kids didn't need to witness what was about to happen. "I'm ready." We took the elevator to the 32nd floor. The party was already in full swing. Maybe 50 people scattered around the elegant rooftop space, city lights twinkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. A thunderstorm was building on the horizon, dark clouds rolling in from the west. Nathan was holding court near the bar, gesturing animatedly as he told his story to a small group of colleagues. Miranda stood beside him, playing the role of the supportive partner, but I could see the strain in her posture, the forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Complete fabrication," Nathan was saying as we approached. "Owen Carver is a bitter, vindictive man who couldn't handle the fact that his wife had outgrown their marriage. Everything you saw in that video was taken out of context, edited, to make us look guilty." "Interesting theory," I said, stepping into the circle. The conversation stopped. Nathan's face went white, then red. "You're not supposed to be here." "Public event, public space. Besides, I wanted to hear your side of the story." I smiled pleasantly. "Please continue. You were explaining how stealing marital assets and planning to abandon children was just taken out of context." The people around Nathan began backing away, sensing confrontation. A few were already pulling out their phones, ready to record whatever happened next. "Owen, please," Miranda said quietly. "Haven't you done enough?" "Have I? Let's see. You stole money from our joint accounts, planned to disappear to Costa Rica, discussed abandoning our children, and committed fraud with your boyfriend. But I'm the villain because I exposed your crimes." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Miranda? Explain it to everyone here. Tell them how you were protecting our family by planning to rob us." Nathan stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "You need to leave, now." "Or what? You'll call security? Have me arrested for trespassing at a public event?" I looked around the room, addressing the growing crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Nathan Barlow, embezzler and homewrecker, and Miranda Carver, thief and abandoner of children." "That's slander," Nathan shouted. "Actually, it's truth. There's a difference." I pulled out my phone and activated the speaker. "Would you like to hear the recordings again? I have hours of you two planning your crimes." "Stop," Miranda whispered. But I was done stopping. I was done being reasonable, done being the victim, done letting them control the narrative. "No, Miranda, you don't get to say stop. You didn't stop when you were stealing from our children's college funds. You didn't stop when you were planning to disappear and leave them fatherless. You didn't stop when you brought your boyfriend into our home and our bed." The crowd was growing larger, drawn by the raised voices and the obvious drama. Nathan's colleagues, his friends, people who'd known him for years, they were all watching him be systematically destroyed. Nathan made a desperate move, lunging at me with his fists raised, but I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I sidestepped easily, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to send him stumbling toward the rooftop pool. He hit the water with a tremendous splash, sinking beneath the surface in his expensive suit. The crowd gasped, then began laughing as he surfaced, sputtering and humiliated. "Cool off, champ," I called out. But I wasn't done. While Nathan floundered in the pool, I turned to address the crowd directly. "I want everyone here to understand something," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the rooftop. "This isn't about revenge. This isn't about a bitter divorce or hurt feelings. This is about justice." Miranda was crying again, but I felt no sympathy for her tears. Miranda Carver and Nathan Barlow spent months planning to commit fraud, embezzlement, and theft. They were going to steal everything I'd worked for, everything I'd saved for my children's future, and disappear to another country where they couldn't be prosecuted. I pulled out a thick folder and held it up. I have bank records, email communications, recorded conversations, and evidence of financial crimes spanning 6 months. Everything they did, every lie they told, every dollar they stole, it's all documented. Nathan had climbed out of the pool and was standing there dripping, his expensive suit ruined, his hair plastered to his head. He looked pathetic. But more than that, I continued, they showed complete contempt for the people who loved them. Miranda was prepared to abandon our 17-year-old daughter and 14-year-old son. Nathan was prepared to destroy his wife's financial security and leave her with nothing. Julia stepped forward, and I realized she'd been recording everything on her phone. "The live stream is active again," she announced. "Current viewer count is over 800 people." The crowd began murmuring, realizing that this confrontation was being broadcast to the entire community. Nathan's professional reputation, already damaged, was being obliterated in real time. "You want the truth?" I asked, addressing both the room and the online audience. "Here's the truth. Some people are willing to betray anyone, hurt anyone, destroy anyone to get what they want. Miranda and Nathan are those people." Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first drops of rain began to fall. "Owen, please," Miranda said one last time. "Think about Sophie and Max. They don't need to see their parents destroying each other." "You should have thought about Sophie and Max before you decided to steal their college funds and plan to abandon them," I replied. "You should have thought about them before you brought Nathan into their home and discussed how much better off they'd be without their father." The rain was getting heavier, driving some of the party guests toward the covered areas of the rooftop, but most stayed to watch the final act of our drama. "I have one more thing to share," I said, pulling out my phone again. "This is a recording of Miranda explaining to Nathan how she planned to manipulate our children into believing that I was the problem in our marriage." "Don't," she whispered, but I played it anyway. Miranda's voice filled the air, casual and calculating as she discussed strategies for turning Sophie and Max against me, for making them believe that their father was holding the family back. The silence that followed was profound. Even Nathan, standing there dripping and humiliated, looked shocked by the callousness in Miranda's voice. "That's who you're supporting," I told the crowd. "That's who Nathan Barlow chose over his own wife, a woman who was prepared to psychologically manipulate children to cover up her crimes." Miranda broke then, completely and finally. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing with the kind of desperate grief that comes when someone realizes they've lost everything that ever mattered. Nathan tried one last desperate gambit. "She's lying." Owen edited those recordings, took them out of context. "Then explain the bank records," Julia interrupted, stepping forward with her own folder of evidence. "Explain the offshore accounts, the wire transfers, the systematic theft of marital assets. Explain the embezzlement from your employer, the fraudulent expense reports, the conspiracy to commit financial crimes." She began reading from the documents, her lawyer's voice clear and precise as she detailed every crime, every betrayal, every lie. The crowd listened in stunned silence as the full scope of Nathan and Miranda's conspiracy was revealed. "And finally," Julia concluded, "explain this." She held up an official-looking document. "This is an arrest warrant, issued this afternoon by the district attorney's office. Nathan Barlow and Miranda Carver, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and theft of marital assets." The timing was perfect. As if summoned by Julia's words, police officers appeared at the rooftop entrance, moving purposefully through the crowd. Nathan tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The rooftop was 32 floors above the street, surrounded by glass barriers. He was trapped. Miranda didn't even try to flee. She sat in her chair, broken and defeated, as the officers approached with handcuffs. "Nathan Barlow, Miranda Carver, you're under arrest," the lead officer announced. "You have the right to remain silent." As they read the Miranda rights to Miranda, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. I felt a profound sense of completion. The game that had started months ago in a coffee shop was finally over. The storm was in full force now, rain lashing the windows and thunder echoing across the city. Lightning illuminated the rooftop as Nathan and Miranda were led away in handcuffs, their crimes exposed, their reputations destroyed, their freedom forfeit. Julia appeared at my side as the police cars disappeared into the night. "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. Like justice. Good, because they got exactly what they deserved. The The crowd was dispersing, people heading home with the story of the decade to share. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know what had happened. Nathan and Miranda would be infamous, their names synonymous with betrayal and greed. As Julia and I prepared to leave, I looked out over the city lights, thinking about my children. They were safe with their aunt, protected from the worst of this scandal, but they would have questions. They would want to understand how their mother had become someone capable of such betrayal. I would tell them the truth, age-appropriate and carefully presented, but the truth nonetheless. They deserved to know that their father had fought for them, had protected them, had refused to let them be abandoned and forgotten. "Ready to go home?" Julia asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." As we walked to the elevator, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The game was over, the victory was complete, and justice had been served. Miranda and Nathan had made their choices, and now they would face the consequences. My children were safe, my assets were protected, and my reputation was intact. In chess, they call it checkmate, the moment when your opponent realizes they have no moves left, no way to escape, no hope of victory. Standing there in the storm, watching the police cars disappear into the night, I smiled. Checkmate, darling.